When the police say they're going to take no further action after investigating a potential crime, after investigating allegations, does that mean that there is no question to answer? Does that mean that the events never took place? Does that mean somebody is exonerated? It's all a little bit unclear. The same wording was used about Dan Wootton, and he was very clear that he had been exonerated by the police. And yet the police in Scotland said they would look at the case again if further evidence emerged. And the same sort of crypto absolution has been given to Julian Knight, who says that because the police have said they will take no further action, having investigated allegations of sexual assault, that he thinks he should have had the whip restored to him in the Conservative Party, and because it hasn't been restored, he's going to run as an independent in his Solihull constituency. He's discussed this with his family, with Conservative members, with constituents, and he's decided to run in the forthcoming election against the people, against the party that he has hitherto stood for. And he had previously announced in April that he intended to quit Parliament altogether, presumably because of the stress of what he calls malicious sexual assault allegations. And now the police, he tells us, are looking into these issues as a perversion of the course of justice. It's being further investigated. He has said that the Prime Minister has proven to be a disastrous campaigner, and has said the election is over for the Conservatives. In a Parliament dominated by Labour, Solihull would be best served by an independent. He was stripped of the Conservative whip in 2022, when it came out that he was being investigated by the Metropolitan Police. And Scotland Yard dropped its investigation in March 23, but passed the allegation on to the Essex force. That isn't clear. That doesn't suggest to me that everything is whiter than snow, but equally, it certainly doesn't say that any criminal offence has taken place. There's this grey area where simply the allegation itself has destroyed somebody's career. And there seems to be a lack of clarity in these cases. And at the same time, a lack of clarity for people who are reporting these cases. So, for example, in the case of Dan Wootton, there was extraordinary pressure on Byline Times, which broke the story in the first place. And an extraordinary pressure on them to say that a mistake had been made, which I think probably is correct. But there is still that whiff of Scotland, as here in this case, there is still that whiff of Essex. And Labour is going to contest the Solihull seat with Richard Parker, who Labour is going to contest the seat after Richard Parker won the West Midlands mayoral election earlier. So the Labour vote is already up and enthusiastic. And a Conservative vote split by an independent will presumably damage the possibility of a Conservative victory in Solihull, as well as almost certainly an independent victory. What we ought to see in Parliament is more independence, and we ought to see in the media more independence and more people putting forward an opinion rather than quote the facts. The idea of an opinion is really very good, even if it's wrong. And it gives one something to bounce off. It gives one a personal it personalises the news in a way that I think the BBC is trying so hard to be unbiased, it becomes bland. And the news is not bland. The news affects ordinary people. And the moment you hear it, you have an opinion based on either your perception of the people involved or your experience of the events which are being discussed. But the news is not something that passes you by as simply wallpaper. And I think it needs to be personalized. Whether we like the person who is doing the personalizing or whether we don't, it doesn't matter. I like the Maitusi approach, which is to say this is the news and this is my opinion. I don't think I'm capable of that. I don't think I'm clear-minded enough to be able to say this is the news and this is my opinion. In my case, I think I tend to assume the news is something which you will get elsewhere, and this is my opinion. Whatever I say is coloured by my opinion, and my opinion is often wrong. And the fact that you don't agree with me doesn't mean it isn't the start of a conversation, which is why even when people are quite furious and quite personal in their attacks, I will put one of these little hearts and a thumbs up sign, because that discussion, it's the discussion among the people who are commenting, not the discussion with me. I rarely get involved in that. I don't have the time to do much more than just comment on the comments. But I think a healthy discussion is something we should be promoting as people with a media voice. And mainstream media has abandoned that job. And I don't see Laura Quensberg on a Sunday morning doing that in a way that Andrew Marr used to, in a way that Paxman used to. And the Paxman interview was in part this aggressive probing, but it was also in part opinion. And where the border between those two took place, that was interesting. What we've got left is this probing, this bullying, which I think is not interesting. Bullying to end up with an unbiased statement of fact, as if it's some sort of papal pronouncement. This is infallible. This has the imprimatur of the truth. No, it doesn't. It's just another opinion. And even the facts can be interpreted and presented in different ways. Facts are as transient and as ephemeral as opinions. They can change. It just depends which view you had of those facts. Our views can change depending on where we're standing.